Thank you so much, Herbert. And I also want to join Jean Ekra and what Uche said, about infrastructure financing and so on. Now, for us, UBA is a bank that operates in 19 African countries. And each of these countries, has its own regulations and laws. And in some instances, you have, some regional blocks that have, their own laws as well. For instance, in the CMAC region, in the UMA zone, and so on and so forth. And, recently what we had was a situation where it was very difficult for you to move capital across. For instance, if you are moving capital to stabilize or strengthen the subsidiary outside Nigeria, it was, a very big issue. And recently, we were very, very glad when the Central Bank of Nigeria actually relaxed that particular regulation and so on. We've also had instances where, capital has been increased in certain countries and, made it discriminatory in nature. For instance, if you are a local bank, you have a different capital requirement, and if you are a foreign bank, regardless of whether you are from Africa or outside Africa, you have a different requirement. We have also had instances where capital increase, have been made discriminatory again in the sense that you have, very shorter period to meet that requirement, whereas local banks, have longer period to meet the requirements and so on. So all these have been some challenges that, we've been facing in dealing with investments across Africa and so on. Now, the other issue is, it was mentioned here that the intra-Africa trade, a lot of that, is informal in nature. And for a bank like UBA, what we have tried to do was, to develop some specific products to enable people to move, funds across, the borders and so on. One of the key issues that we have, one of the key challenges are things like, currency exposures and currency risks and so on and so forth. Now, for UBA, it has been some challenges, but somehow we've been able to overcome some of these challenges, which is, the reason why we are able to operate very well in the 19 African countries and so on. Coming to what the countries can do specifically and what World Bank can do, we believe that, the involvement of World Bank in some areas like partial risk guarantee, which was mentioned about here, is going to assist significantly. In the privatization of the power sector in Nigeria, UBA was able to do as much as about $700 million. And one of the reasons why we were able to provide that debt capital was because, we had the partial risk guarantee coming from World Bank and so on. So that to us, was some form of comfort. We also think that some form of risk sharing, participation from the likes of IFC and so on, we assist, in those areas as well. But most importantly was the issue that Jean Ekra mentioned, which is, the source of funding. You find out that as a commercial bank, that the balance sheet is such that your funding sources are very, very short in nature. And most of the transactions here, funding in infrastructure, actually require long-term financing and so on. So to that extent, the banks will require some form of credit lines, from the multilateral agencies and institutions to fund those projects and so on. Thank you so much.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.